Guys, I had to go to I had to run my dog to the vet this morning, and my dog has Addison's, which is like JFK has it. You know what I mean? And it has to get a shot once a month. But so I grab a giant coffee, right? That's kind of what I do. But then
Yeah.
my wife comes home and she brought me another coffee. So it's
Oh,
like now,
yes.
guys, I'm on turbo. Are you ready? Let's go.
Let's
Let's
go.
go. Welcome to Splintered Spirits, a podcast hosted by me, Gary, and my nephew, John Santa from Santa Paranormal, where I follow Johnny as he tries to prove his theory that ghosts are the fractured memories of the living. Today we're talking about a different kind of haunting, the way a recipe can keep somebody alive long after they're gone. Our guest is food folklorist and archivist Rosie Grant, the creator behind the viral project Ghostly Archive on TikTok and Instagram. While she was getting her degree in library science and interning at Congressional Cemetery, Rosie discovered something unusual: gravestones engraved with full recipes. Instead of Bible verses or solemn epitaphs, these headstones were carved with instructions for spritz cookies, tea biscuits, and casseroles. She started tracking them down, baking each dish, and then bringing the finished food back to the graves to share a bite with the person who inspired it. That journey became her first book, To Die For, a Cookbook of Gravestone Recipes, a collection of recipes and family stories from cemeteries across the U.S. and beyond that explores how food, memory, and mourning all collide. We're going to talk about why families choose to etch recipes into stone, that connection between the living and the dead through food, and how cooking can be its own kind of spirit communication, especially for people who don't think of themselves as paranormal at all. Let's dive into the conversation. So it's just you're diving in early here for this. Rosie, thank you so much for being here. I got to tell you, you are the first person that I've come across that has a love for cemeteries as much as my nephew here, and such a unique way of how you show that love with your book, To Die For, which we're going to get into. Absolutely. That's why you're here. And I learned a new word, which was, well, I think I learned a new word and I just lost it. A taphophile? What is it?
Tapophiles, yeah, people who love cemeteries and gravestones.
So you guys are a couple taffies, I guess. That's what it is.
There's
You're
some laughing
both
trappies.
both taffies. So Rosie, I got to find out how you became one. So it's like, so you grew up around ghost tours and cemeteries, right? And this is because of your parents?
Yeah, I mean, maybe John, I'm curious for you as well what your kind of origin in cemeteries were, but I grew up near a graveyard that I would walk through from, it was like my shortcut through high school to get back home on my walk home.
Where
And
was this?
this was in Alexandria, Virginia, which has some really cool old cemeteries. And yes, my parents are now both ghost tour guides. So we would go on cemetery tours and ghost tours all throughout my childhood. And so cemeteries are just so rad, and it's so fun to see how each one is so different, and they're all, such a marker of each place and location. But I don't think I really knew a lot of the like behind the scenes work, how much work it is to do the upkeep for a cemetery until I interned in one. And that was 2021. So that was my sort of like more lift into this area. And I have such a strong appreciation for people who do gravestone cleaning and preservation work because it's truly such a labor of love.
That's a long time between being, what was that? What was it? What the world looked like through your eyes of, younger you walking through cemeteries to walk home and being around ghosts or your parents. Is there a belief in it? How did that play up to what was Halloween like?
Oh man, Halloween's awesome. It's always been the Grants' favorite holiday. And I'm Irish Catholic, which has so many good ghost stories and spooky stories that the family would just tell. But then even for the cemetery side themselves, I think it gave me this just, appreciation for history and how each gravestone tells a story. And yeah, I think younger me wasn't super surprised that older me just wrote a book about cemeteries, particularly a cookbook because I love food as well. So honestly, I feel like the gravestone recipe cookbook is such combination of my family gathering around the table and telling stories, whether on Halloween or otherwise.
Amazing. Uh, so from you were trained as an archivist, right? And then you wanted to be a librarian. I have never met anybody who wanted to be a librarian. What is that? Is that
I've
just
I've
because of the
only met
love?
one other person, so this is actually pretty wild. So yeah,
So
what
how?
was your
I'm so curious. Like, what? That's a real. Like, are you data driven, or what is that drive to go down that road?
do you like
Oh,
the
man.
smell of old books?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
a lot of people, yeah,
right? Or do
yep,
y'all
yep,
have are
yep,
you big library folks, especially if you're
yeah.
in Los Angeles with some of the best libraries?
My daughter is a giant bookworm, so she loves old bookstores. I wouldn't say she
Mm,
frequents libraries too much, but she loves a good mom and pop sort of classic bookstore.
ugh,
She loves going in those. It's
oh
her
my
it's her
gosh.
favorite thing. But for you, like, how did that what was it? Like, that's a lot, like, is it reclusive nature? Like, what is it about being an archivist and a librarian? And I have a point to all these questions, by the way, but I'm
Oh,
just sort of
no, I
curious,
love
like,
this. It's a great question. Well, so I was working at a museum pre going into library science, and I should say I was an English major. I always loved libraries. My uncle, who was a spooky Halloween loving guy, he's my godfather as well. This is my dad's younger brother, also a librarian. And so I think when I was a kid, I was also very inspired. My favorite movie is The Mummy. And when Rachel Weisz's character is like, "I'm a librarian." And actually, technically, she's more of an archivist because she's very into like the objects and the preservation of history.
Rosie, that might be the nerdiest thing you're gonna say today.
Right?
Like, right? To point out, "Excuse me, you are not a librarian, you are an archivist." Might be,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. I wrote,
yeah,
I
own it.
mean, we all have these things exactly. And I mean, even I saw that movie and I was like, golly, I want to be a librarian too
Well,
someday.
what's so wild to think about that whole thing is the fact that there are items right now that have been archived that we still don't know where they come from. We don't have the exact origins, and we're still finding new things about these items. Like you see like articles all the time. Like, like, hey, this was in an archive for 50, 60 years and we just figured out what this was, so that's pretty cool.
It's
Yeah, man, we
so
all wanna be
rad.
Indiana Jones in some
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah, right.
but
It
she didn't do
really
what they
is
but yeah, right,
that.
he was the professor as opposed to the adventurer, so you went down the librarian road. No,
Well,
it's
yeah,
it's
two sides of the same coin, and it's because of the archivist. I think even working in the museum, the archivist's job is to they're less on the curator side or the professor or the historian. They're really around to make sure the objects are in the best condition to have for the people in the future. So, yeah, that could be like, we don't know what this is. They're going to try to take care of the object as best as we can until we learn more. New histories are always coming out, new contexts are always being added to objects. And I was very inspired by community archives, which a lot of cemeteries fall under this of like, we have like institutional archives of like land records and management and ownership of property and things like that. And community archives is more like, well, every community has a story. A lot of, again, the cemetery preservation work, which can go into land ownership, people buy a plot, but also it goes into the stories of like, who are these people that history might have forgotten. So it gets to be the archivist's job to uncover that, to protect that story, and to help people in the future learn it. So I was very inspired by all of that. And also, I mean, yeah, it was early days of the pandemic. I was so inspired by like all of my classmates in library science school were just librarians. They were already librarians and they just wanted to be more helpful. They were like putting themselves through school, paying for a master's degree because they're like, how do I be a better librarian than I already am? And in my mind, I'm like, you're already helping everybody. Like, you're
I have so
already
many
so
I
great.
have so many questions about library science but this is not the place, but we'll have to talk another time. Like, just because I do find it's just something I know nothing about. And so you're studying for this. You get an internship at the Congressional Cemetery. Is this all about the same time? Like, you're a student,
Exactly the same
and
time. I'm a student
okay.
at the time, yeah.
No, and what did you expect that job to be like, and what surprised you the most? What is interning at the Congressional Cemetery even mean?
It's such a good question. I felt so, I mean, it was such a fortuitous time because, yeah, a lot of libraries and archives were closed during, early quarantine days. So I couldn't have gotten the same experience. But yeah, cemeteries were unfortunately, in some cases, busier than ever. And so I interned, yeah, as it goes. I interned
Right.
in the archives of Congressional, which is one of Washington, D.C.'s oldest cemeteries. And I basically was documenting the gravestones, and we were putting this sort of like online exhibition around their residents who are more famous of like they have some very famous activists and of course politicians that have gone through DC. They have some really unusual cenotaphs and other parts of the cemetery too. They have an apiary, they have history tours, they have a book club, they have a death doula. And it's very much a place that's trying to connect to the community and tell these stories. And so I was a part of that work. It was awesome. I got to go to all of their events, and they do movie nights, and they do this one called Soul Strolls, where it's like during the Prohibition days in DC, they had a lot of characters, so they retell all the character stories, and then you end at a speakeasy at the end of the cemetery. And it's just a delightful place in general.
It's like Hollywood Forever out here that has
Yes.
all the events like that, right? That you've been to.
Exactly so. I think Hollywood Forever honestly has been very inspirational to a lot of other cemeteries. And obviously, some people, that's not for them. They don't want to be buried in a place that's like so for the living.
Right.
It's nice that we have options, but personally, I loved how welcoming they were to the community. And Congressional was a derelict cemetery even in the 90s. And then the local community came together, and it actually was these random dog walkers in the neighborhood who started this sort of association, and now you pay an annual fee, and that goes to the preservation, and you can walk your dog in the cemetery, and it's a 2-year waiting list to try to be in this membership group, which basically just goes to the upkeep of the cemetery. So, not for everyone, but a really interesting model.
It
That's
really
wild.
is. It really,
John,
really is.
I could see John like loving this every second
Oh,
of this.
well, because listen, other than Hollywood Forever, not many cemeteries do what she's speaking about. Even still, a lot of cemeteries are very recluse. I mean, even take the famous Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Sure, they do
Yeah.
tours, this, that, and the other, but they are super strict on who's walking around and who's doing what. So, yeah, no, I love hearing about all this because I love the old Victorian ways of cemeteries where people went and picnicked and, brought their kids, and it was more like a park, setting. So I'm all for that. Yeah, yeah, I'm enjoying this.
So when you say
100%.
Yeah.
what when you say Rosie, you were documenting uh the graves there. What does that mean exactly? It's just what is
Literally
that?
just
Like
taking
where it is?
photos. Yeah, where it
Oh, okay.
is, the Congressional actually has an app, but we also I mean, I think every cemetery does it a little bit differently, but when you take a photo that helps with the geocoordinates of something, if you have locations turned on, and so you can later get the geocoordinates for where a person is, and if you take that photo over the gravestone, there are obviously way fancier devices doing that, but, like, taking a photo on your phone has a marker of what the location is, and so we would use those geocoordinates for each of the stones. I should say our cemetery wasn't that big. I mean, compared to like, these beautiful rural cemeteries that you were talking about, John, that had the picnicking, a Greenwood cemetery, a Mount Auburn, places like that. But
Mhm.
even for ours, it's big enough that like if someone wanted to go find, for instance, Leonard Matlovich, who's a very famous gay rights activist, you would be able to actually find the coordinates of his grave and then a little story for him. And, some of these will just be used in like brochures so people can pick up a free brochure. They can walk around the cemetery and find each person. I think we're getting into more QR codes. This is since I've left, but my understanding is that there's now these little things. So as you're walking around and you're like, oh, what a cool grave. Who is this person? If the
I think you
family
scan it.
were
Mhm.
exactly. And you can learn like a
Yeah,
little bit about each person.
yeah.
There's
And
got to
and
be somebody's got to be out there that's got a QR code engraved on their headstone, and
oh,
then
there's a bunch of them.
when
There's
you do it, you get rickrolled.
there's not like it's not like they're not engraved, but there's like I visited cemeteries where you see QR codes
Yeah.
stuck on the headstone, and you scan it, and it brings up like there's a couple of different companies now that do it,
Right.
and but they don't last, unfortunately. What weather they end up getting weathered and whatnot. But the documentation part is so cool because let's be real. anything can happen in a cemetery. If it's
Yeah.
got trees, branches can fall over, stones can get pulverized. Somebody drunk could go running through a cemetery and run over headstones. And it happens, On my live, I caught somebody going off an embankment and plowing over a couple of headstones. These things happen. So taking those pictures and having that original picture with the geo coordinates is like super helpful, especially for restoration purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild. All right, so Rosie, take us back to the first time you actually saw a recipe on a gravestone.
Well, the very first time, so I should say this was also part of my program. I was in a class that was like, how does social media work? And I think the idea is like a lot of libraries have to be on social media for advocacy reasons and of course educational, teaching people about their programs and free resources. And so it was just like sort of a 101, but we had to start an account from scratch on a topic. And my professor, this was at the same time I was in the cemetery internship. So she was like, why don't you make a TikTok about what it's like to intern at a cemetery. So I was featuring different memorials and gravestones and sort of like things that I was learning because I found it all very new. I didn't know that people had QR codes. I didn't know that people had inside jokes or unusual, like if you have dogs that you like, you could put your statue of your dog with your grave. Like anything could go onto a gravestone, technically within reason.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? Like it was really cool. So I was first featuring other Washington, D.C. based places and cemeteries. And then I moved on to just other interesting graves that I learned about in general. And that's how I learned about a woman named Naomi Odessa Miller Dawson, who was at Greenwood Cemetery, one of these sort of Victorian era rural cemeteries that people
Uh,
would picnic
Greenwood
one
in Brooklyn.
in
In
Brooklyn. That's the
Brooklyn.
one.
Is that the one that has is it the note bake? Oh, no, the Dale and the Dale bread recipe? Is that one?
So the Dayton Nut Bread one is just a little bit north of New York City in Highland
Okay.
Mills. The one that's in
That's the only one
Brooklyn.
I know that's close to me.
Oh, no way, that's awesome. That
Yeah,
one is
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
good. Connie's, yeah. No, that's a really again, very close to New York, and I actually visited the 2 women the same day when I first went up. Beautiful area. Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful area.
Yeah.
And yeah, Naomi is the one with the Spritz cookie recipe, so she was the
Right.
very first one I learned about. There's this website called Atlas Obscura that has just, like, off the beaten path things that I loved reading through or submitting to, and it's sort of like you can pull up a map of, like, where you are. Lots of cemetery stories, lots of gravestones featured, and it's, yeah, crowdsourced, but very well curated, and I was just, like, obsessed with this idea of, like, someone put a recipe on their gravestone?
It
Like,
is
a
genius. Not only
genius.
that, but and then for you to recognize that and I mean, look, I'm a TV producer, right? That's kind of what my background is in development. Like, and I'm sure 100 people have said this should be a TV show, which you should just do it yourself and make fortune covering it. But it's like it is anyway. Sorry, I'm interrupting, but
No,
the
I love
fact that
that.
you saw it, capitalized on it, and like, oh my god, did other people do this? And you recognize it right away, something unique is testament to yourself. So you see this, you find this thing in an Atlas Obscura, you go there to really see it one on one, and then you what? Go for it.
Yeah, so I think this was in the beginning. So I mean, basically it was just like I was posting every single day because that was the requirement for the class. So I was just featuring a different person. So I think I didn't even recognize this like greater power. Particularly I didn't know there were other people that had this. I just thought like it was basically like a Tuesday feature where I was like, wow, someone did this and like what do these cookies taste like? So I posted the process on TikTok and, all these comments came in where I was very struck by, like, a lot of people were commenting things like, "Wow, that's so cool. What would I put on my gravestone?" And, like, engaging with this topic, which I thought was interesting, but even more so, I was getting comments from people being like, "My mom passed away recently. I still make her recipe when I miss her." And it was just this really deeply personal story after story, private messages of people just talking about them losing someone and how they were using food to remember them and still have their recipe or they wish they had their recipe. And so my brother lives in Brooklyn and I have a lot of family in Brooklyn. So my mom and I had driven up just to go to the area and we were like, well, why don't we visit Naomi while we were there? And I was thinking of what I hadn't met with her family yet at that point. Naomi was, again, very well featured on the internet, but I was wondering what flowers that I should bring to her, or like what her favorite flowers might have been. And then I thought, well, she has this cookie recipe. I should bring her cookies. So that's why I brought Naomi's cookies. And that kind of just started it off of like my mom and I had a cookie tasting right next to her. And it felt very much in the old Victorian tradition of picnicking with lost loved ones at a cemetery. And it felt
So
really
cool.
lovely, right? It's just, there's
So
something
cool.
about it.
So
And so then going on to Connie, who you're near, Connie is a little bit north of New York City, and she has a Dayton nut bread, and I was like, "Well, if I'm visiting Naomi, I should visit Connie." And after that, I just started researching more folks and more people, so the first 8 or so recipes and people I found on the internet, they were featured in news and blogs and podcasts, and then after that, families themselves started reaching out, which just kind of changed the entire project for me.
Did you get
And
an A in this class?
what's wild is
So-
I can only really think that there I mean, how many people actually put a recipe on a headstone? It has to be less than, if I had to take a guess, 200. And then how many of them are weathered, where you can't even tell? It looks like any other random, inscription on a stone. So my question is, how many were you able to find, not just on your own, but with people reaching out to you?
Yeah, they've all been crowdsourced. To this date, I know of 52 around the world, mostly in the US. And yeah, it is such a good point of the weather element. I mean, these are public outdoor memorials. So,
Yeah.
there's one in Nome, Alaska that the lettering, this was a pretty easy fix, and we're actually figuring out how to get the materials up to this family because it's easier to do a DIY fix rather than fly someone up there. Gnome's hard to get to. But you know how like that has some lettering that's been engraved. There's this like white sort of paint.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's a more professional word, but you can basically do the re-inscription because the engraving is still there. It's still a new enough gravestone. There's another woman in Maine, though. Her gravestone faces up. It's a flatbed memorial, and that one has dealt with a lot of lichen and the external elements. And so the family's talked about having to clean that quite regularly in order to like still be able to see the recipe. So it's so true. Like, and I should also say I benefited from none of these gravestones are that old. They're all in the 20-ish years, pretty much granite made, so they'll last a decent amount, but they won't
Yeah,
last for forever.
granite cleans up pretty easy too.
It
Out of all
does,
the
yeah.
headstones, granite cleans up pretty easy. Yes, 52, that's insane. Now let me ask you a question. Do you think that there are any older ones? Do you think that maybe somebody in the, 1800s or early 1900s thought, "You know what? I want my recipe on my headstone. This is me.
Uh,
This is what defines me." Do you think you'll ever find one of those?
I would love that so much. I'm not sure if it would happen in North America, and from my understanding, and you might even know a little bit more about this, I took a history of the American cemetery class, so this is where this is, like, very basically based on. In the olden days, cemeteries were, or I should say graveyards had like, first wood, and then of course that would disintegrate if they were marked at all. And then we moved on to marble. And a lot of the stones were done by this family, I think around Boston. And so they would
Yes.
mass carve a bunch and then ship them all out. So for the most, that's why so many of these, lots of memento mori and like the very classic, and you would just add nates, birth dates, the basics.
Nice.
Now, that being said, I could totally like, I was looking of like, what is the history of like leaving behind recipes? And there are like, ancient Egyptian caves and pyramid adjacent type things that a recipe would be left behind as far as like a death practice. So I wonder if I go a little bit more cross culturally, I might get something older because that would be so rad. I would
That
love
is
that
Yeah, that'd be very cool, wouldn't it? Wow.
one day.
One day, right? One day. Hey, listen, you never know.
Yeah, but it
Did you get an
really
Did you get an A in this class? I hope.
I did get an A in
She
this
had
class,
to.
Yeah.
She
Could you
had to.
imagine? Could you imagine if you didn't get the A?
Yeah, she got a B
I would have been.
plus.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
I would send that teacher. I would have sent that teacher your book,
Oh, for
and like
sure. No,
sign.
Oh,
Katie could've
I blast that teacher once a month on my social media.
Yeah.
"Hey,
Oh my God.
remember,
Could you imagine?
day 156 of telling this professor,
You
you
know,
only gave me a B."
it's crazy. Rosie,
Hustle.
you got a couple 100,000 followers now. I mean, obviously this thing is blown up. And have you gotten any I mean, even John gets this quite a bit. How has the reaction been? I mean, have you gotten some negative reaction to it too, where it's like, come on,
You're
even
For
not
though you're doing
family, you
sure.
something,
shouldn't be there, you did that.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
How do
no,
you
I think
manage that?
so. I think for
How do you
the
manage
I'm
it?
honestly, and John, you maybe feel the same because the idea I would love if, like, the Association of Gravestone Studies, which is this, like, gravestone conference and membership group that they engage with a lot of these topics. It's a lot of cemetery workers, but I think more and more so, it's a lot of cemetery preservation workers and educators, and yes, TikTokers and social media folks fall under that. And I definitely think that, like, having, like, a camera and documenting in a cemetery has a lot of pros and cons to it, and, we've seen people do things in cemeteries that are against all the cemetery rules, like, most cemeteries have the rules printed at their gates of, like, "You can
Mhm.
do this, you can't do this. Don't be here in the middle of the night,"
Right,
"Don't
yeah,
play around with the gravestones, don't be
yeah.
disrespectful."
No
And I
artificial flowers, no, no
Yeah.
things like that, yeah,
Exactly, and then don't leave food behind, so that is a
yeah,
comment
don't
I
leave
do
them.
get frequently of, like, yeah, and people are like, "Oh, you should leave the cookies for them," and I'm like, "Well, I've worked in a cemetery, I know who has to clean that up, and usually it just attracts
Yeah,
animals."
yeah,
But, if nothing else, I look at any of the negative comments as people are on some level engaging with this topic 'cause I do think death is very taboo. Cemetery etiquette isn't necessarily taught to people of, like, you can most cemeteries, if anything, should be welcoming to people as long as you follow the rules, you're respectful. You go through and read the names. And this is very much based out of the archives side of the idea that a lot of archives are really struggling because the community around them doesn't care. And eventually, if the community doesn't care, including if they don't care about the cemetery, it becomes derelict. They're very expensive to maintain. And then eventually, like, I'm from the DC area, we have had so many cemeteries bulldozed, turned into parking lots and shopping malls. And the life of the cemetery depends on the local community connecting to it. So while I can totally understand and people are, engaging with death in their own way, so maybe they'll never be comfortable enough to walk into a cemetery themselves. At least, like, I would like to think, them watching John respectfully cleaning gravestones with the permission of the cemetery, you're following on the rules, you're talking with them, and it's a celebration of these people. I do
mhm.
think that gets people one step closer to something that is maybe a little uncomfortable to think about. And also it sets like guidelines of like there are ways to ethically be in a cemetery, engage with the cemetery, be welcomed by the cemetery. So I think it's just there's a healthy model out there basically.
Rose,
Have, oh,
you're 100% correct, and what I tell people, because I get this all the time, I say something that kinda throws people back. The first thing I say is, "Cemeteries are a waste of space unless you're visiting them. These headstones are here as a testament to the microhistory of the people that lived here. And if you're not there visiting them, then the cemetery is a waste of space. Then there's no point for that cemetery. So why shy away from going and visiting a place, honoring that place, soaking in the micro history, the people that live there, connecting with the culture and the community that was there before you were. It's pretty crazy to
so
think about, but
and Rose, John sets boundaries for himself, right? Personal ones. He tries to avoid newer graves because of what he's doing with the spirit box, and he's going to these. There's a lot of places, obviously, from Civil or Revolutionary War in his area
Mhm.
that he sticks to, right? What personal boundaries did you set for yourself when you went about this process? Because these are newer graves, family's still
Yeah.
alive, and you're doing it. So
Yeah.
what, how did you, what were your own rules, or how did you sort of do this?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the ethics around this, I think, again, are like, it is a little bit based off of like comfort level and then, yeah, engaging with the family in order to feature the family. And this was the biggest part with the book, too, was I needed to get permission from the families. And of course, it was the best case scenario if the person's, daughter or son reached out or their brother-in-law, whoever, if like a connection to the person reached out being like, "Oh my gosh, I thought my mom was the only one who did this. You should try their recipe." That's the best case scenario. In
Sure.
some cases
Certainly the easiest logistically.
certainly the easiest. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and then I get to but there was a case of one gentleman who he was featured on the internet, before external to me, he was just kind of, like, in the cemetery photos rotation, and I got connected with his sister-in-law, and his sister-in-law was so excited. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad John's being included in this. This is wonderful." John never got married, and he didn't have any children, and so eventually I got connected to his brother, who was, like, next of kin, had did managed his estate and everything, and his brother was like, "This is a really personal topic. I would actually like, we're grieving. He didn't die that long ago. We would actually rather him not be included. Other people on the internet have already featured him, but would you mind not posting about him, not including him in the book?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, of course." So, like, they needed to be the ones to dictate that of, like and, like, there's no right or wrong answer. If they are, like in some of the cases with the families, they'd be like, "Let me think about it, like, check in with me in a year, and, like, let's see how I feel." And it would be like, "Okay, setting a calendar alert, I'm gonna check in with you in a year." And then a year later would go by, and I'd be like, "Hey, how are you feeling about this?" Um,
Right.
and so, I mean, every family is a little bit different, and I think in addition to, of course, like, these are public memorials, but it is a family that's lost someone, and, like, they are grieving, and this is, like, a very personal thing to each one, so it really had to rely on how each of the families dealt with it, and, yeah, so some of the ones that I would document them, but they never went beyond being documented just because I was never able to either meet with the family, confirm with the family. So that's why there's only 42 that are featured, or excuse me, 40 that are featured and 15, well, I should say no, 12-ish that are still in the rotation of either I never got permission from the family or I was never able to contact the family. Like I'm still looking to reach out to them. And then as far as just like personal boundaries, I just generally don't really, if a video does well enough, I don't read the comments because I'm like, once it gets beyond a certain threshold, everyone's weighing in on the pros and
Oh,
cons
yeah.
stuff, and
Forget it.
I'm like, "I'm not gonna put myself through that." I will generally read through 'em. Again, people write some really lovely things. Sometimes people will ask, like, details of how to make the recipe, or if the families themselves will comment being like, "That's my grandma," which is really lovely. But beyond that, I generally don't read my comments because 'cause I'm like, "I don't need to know."
Yeah, there's a lot of crazies in this space. They're
Yeah, there are.
crazy.
It's the
There's
internet, that's
crazies.
how it is.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, like graves and dead people. It's just like there's people that are just bananas.
I've
So
dealt with
so
a lot of
yeah,
I'm
unfortunate mental
sure.
illness in this field, so it's
yeah, it's
Ugh,
crazy.
I'm
All
so
right, so let's
sorry.
get into the food just a little bit. I got to imagine what was a common ingredient? Because here's the thing that it makes me laugh, right? Because everyone will say like, "Oh, my great grandmother's chocolate chip cookies were the best ever," and it's like, yeah, man, that's because like she literally used the fat from the goat she just killed, and that stuff's delicious, right? So you know what I mean? Like, was like lard the biggest ingredient? Like what is that secret? What did you find is the most common delicious secret ingredient in all of your recipes?
Definitely lots of shortening ones, which, a lot of people would probably shy away from. Quite a few margarine ones. These were post-depression era, so very classic, like grandma's cookies. Makes a million cookies, uses so much shortening. They are
Right,
really delicious in the end. Some of
right.
the families would
Lard, right?
lard, yeah, lard was being a separate one. So the fats would probably be the biggest, like, range of things. Some people just use butter. Lard, there's only one recipe that required lard, and that was these tea biscuit recipes from a Nova Scotia woman, and I didn't know how to get lard. Like, I was like, "Where do I even order
Yeah,
that?"
yeah,
So some of them there was one that required guava, and I had a lot of trouble finding guava. She lived in Florida, and she would be able to just pick it from her tree, but weirdly in California, I had so much trouble finding guava. So,
right.
things like that, but, cookies and cakes were the biggest generally, like, widespan recipes that I found. I think also, like, the recipe can be written pretty simply, so it fits onto an epitaph pretty well, and they were also a recipe associated with, like, birthdays and special occasions and holidays, like, gathering times when people would be, like, looking forward to this recipe. So they all hosted this, like, thing in their house that people would get excited about, and the recipe was, like, the center feature of it.
Was there,
Right, so
any non-baking recipes found yet?
Yes, just a few. There's a ranch dip of a gentleman in Spokane, Washington, a
Ooh.
woman with a cheese dip recipe, like a chilled cheese dip
Yep,
in
I saw that one.
Iowa.
Ooh.
So good.
Oh, I
There's a
know,
Is
that
meat.
it?
sounds so good.
Uh-oh.
It's so, oh my gosh, it's outrageous. You eat it with club crackers, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so good. The ranch dip is really good too. John, who's the gentleman it belonged to, it's just so good. And so, yeah, a meatloaf one where you have bacon on top. There's a casserole in Wisconsin. So there's enough savory ones to get around to, luckily.
Interesting.
Nice.
Um, what do you think that which one was the most surprising to you in terms of not only the recipe or the story behind it?
I think some of the ones just that was a nice benefit of traveling to each one. Again, it started very randomly of like, well, I'm in New York. And then I would travel to visit other ones as I was, like, going out like, when I was moving from Virginia to California, because my, husband wanted to work out here, I visited a few people along the way. There was a woman in Utah and, just a few other folks scattered around the middle of the country, and then once I had started interviewing the families to get the stories, and I actually had a book concept starting to come together, I was like, "Okay, I need to actually, like, visit all of them," and I think with that, with each trip, I learned so much about each person. 3 of the women are still alive, and so this idea of pre-planning that you can put up your gravestone before you pass away and take care of all your details, and then you
Wait,
have your
wait,
plot.
hold on. Wait a second. 3 of the recipes you found on a headstone, there's these women were still alive.
Still alive.
They already set it up,
Yep,
Yeah, they
and they
exactly.
Gary, they
already
set all the information, and then the
Yep,
only thing that's left is the date
the
that they pass away.
well, the
It's just
body.
well, that
and that
too, the
too.
body. But you'd be surprised how many of these headstones I come across where they never put that final date in. Someone
Yeah,
passes away, they get buried, and then the family is
I did not
sued.
realize that was a thing.
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
That's been going on for I mean, I
Oh,
come
wait a minute.
across
We did hold
from
wait,
the
sorry, this changed
1800s that
everything.
are like that.
So wait, when you call, did you know that when you call and they answer the phone, and do you like freak out, or do you know that they're alive when you call?
Well, the first woman who I learned about, she is named Peggy. Her gravestone is up in Arkansas, and her husband had passed away, so basically they were putting up a combined gravestone for the 2 of them. So I knew there's another cemetery writer in the Ozarks area. She writes about cemeteries in the Ozarks, and she was like, "FYI, there's this woman." So she was the one who so I basically learned about Peggy, her recipe, and her being still alive all at the same time, and I actually cooked with her. So I, like, drove down last summer. We met up in her kitchen. All of her family was there. We cooked together. It was so lovely, and then we
How
brought
old
some
is she?
cookies. She is still pretty young and cooking and kicking. Hopefully she still has a lot of years left on her, but at the same time, like, her husband had died, and so I think it was just like, well, we're already paying for this. And in a lot of cases too, that people so the second woman that I learned about who is in, Alabama, it's a beautiful cemetery, and her husband are a little on the older side, and I think they were like, "We just want everything to be taken care of, so our kids we, A, get exactly what we want. We're in our favorite cemetery," which I believe was running out of space. It's a very popular cemetery in Huntsville, and so basically they're like, "We get the space where we want, we get to whatever we want to put on our gravestone, and then our kids don't have to pay for it or worry about it or worry, like, what do mom and dad want? Because they already picked it for them." And
Sure.
so and then the 3rd woman, I thought I didn't know was still alive, but when I went and visited her grave marker, and it's her and her husband have these 2 twin grave markers in California, and there's no death date on her, and I was like, "Wait, what?" And then eventually someone was like, "Yeah, she still lives in the neighborhood."
I guess if like my wife had put one up for me or something, I'd like, wait a minute. It's like, no, I'm just getting ready for
I'm just
yours.
getting
Getting
ready.
ready for it.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I should worry about it. I actually did not know people did that,
Yeah.
that are still like jumping around and,
Mhm.
Yeah.
cooking. That's so, did you, I mean, this sort of leads into this question then. Did any perspective of you in terms of what you knew or thought about grief or family history or food even change while you put this book together? Like, how do how did those, what was that sort of a connection for you?
Yeah, I think my thoughts on it changed quite a lot during it. Both of my grandmothers passed away in the process of this research happening and starting, and I was at both of their funerals and very much just reflecting on like us gathering around a table and eating the food that they had once made for us. And I still want my one grandmother who passed away, I'd lived with throughout college, and she would make all of us, I'm one of 32 grandkids. She would make every one of us this yellow cake, birthday cake every year, and for my mom's siblings. So she
That's
probably
right. She's Irish. There's a
she's
lot of kids.
Irish.
Right.
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah,
exactly.
I get.
Irish
I forget.
Catholic.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of them for sure.
You
Go
have
ahead.
lots of
Sorry.
kids, and so she would be
Yeah.
making this cake every birthday. She must have just always had a cake coming out of the oven because she was always making it, and it was so special to me and my cousins, and we were just talking of like, "We'll never have grandma's cake again," and my mom was like, "It's literally Duncan Hines box cake. There's, like, nothing special about this cake," but for us, like, the food, it just really transformed that experience, and whenever I eat it still, I still want that every birthday. I feel like I'm a little kid in her kitchen again, and food is this really powerful memory tool. Like you taste this taste and like, it's kind of like that Ratatouille movie where like the villain at the end
Mhm.
eats the Ratatouille dish and he's suddenly like a little kid in his mom's kitchen. And I think food does that for us. So if you're grieving and you miss your person, if you have their recipe or some ability to have some of the flavors you had with them, it felt like my grandmothers were back with me. And it seems like for a lot of the families, that was an important part too of like not only their legacy, they were very like giving people. So what I loved is like it wasn't just like she liked baking or he was a good grill cook or whatever. It was like the tools to let you continue on their tradition, which I really liked that.
Now, yeah, there's definitely a nostalgia, right, to food. And it does spark, something in everyone in terms of a memory. Now, you don't have to say which one. You don't have to be specific. But is there a recipe that you had that was like, this is kind of bullshit? Like, you know what I mean? Like because I've come across that with friends. Like, this is my grandmother's this, and she makes this the best. And then I've eaten it, and I'm like, that's not really great. Like you love it because you grew up with it, but it sucks. It's a little
Well,
dry.
Gary,
It's like,
listen,
what I mean?
we're biased because our my great grandmother, your grandmother would be able to whip up, you know, incredible meals with basically nothing in her fridge. So
Oh,
we're
Yeah,
very biased,
yeah,
dude. We
we
are
are.
very,
That's true.
we are
We're
very
both
biased.
we have we have an Italian grandmother, so it's like, forget it. It's a little
Eh,
different when it comes to cooking, but
yeah.
there's still, we've all been there, right? Where you hear like, oh, you wait until you try my mom's this or that, and then you try it, and you're like, your mom kind of sucks at this or that.
yeah, just
So
ain't that good.
you don't have to tell us, but did you ever come across a recipe or like, this is not that good of a recipe for eternity to
I
have on?
think it's so funny because I definitely feel like, yeah, it is such a personal thing, and, like, so I genuinely, like, I'm a pretty, like I'm just, like, I eat everything. I like everything, like, I'm very lucky that I don't have, like, allergies or things like that, and so I think while I was doing this, like, yeah, at the end of the day, like, I think it's interesting that people decided to do this for themselves regardless of what the recipe is. I mean, it could literally like, my family's recipe is a box recipe. Like, there's no one cares. But we care a
Right,
lot, and so
right.
the beginning section of it was meant to be, like, for people who are like, "Whoa, this came from a gravestone. That's so cool." There's that element to it too, but I think the deeper goal was for you to think about your personal food that okay, yeah, who doesn't want an Italian grandma to be cooking for us that all of us would benefit from? But for
Right,
some people, it might be like, like a ham sandwich that your dad made for you when you were sick, and, like, that's really important to you, and,
right.
like, that might be worth preserving even just for yourself. And so I have like 21 questions to document your own food history, which for some people, it really might not be that complicated of like what they use, or it might be it's no steak tartare or anything. And I should say, none of these gravestone recipes are super complicated. They're all
Well, it
like
can't be,
a chocolate cookie. Yeah, exactly.
can't
There's only
be.
so much space.
There's only so much space, and engraving's expensive. That
It
it's
is.
and it's a skill. And it's a skill. All
Yeah.
right. So, Rosie, I have to ask this. I have to ask this. And this is going to be a multi-part question. In all of your adventures and knowledge and learning when it comes to cemeteries, have you A, ever had an experience at one, or B,
You mean a
a
paranormal experience, you
paranormal
mean?
Mm.
experience? Yeah, yeah, a paranormal experience. Or while you were with these families, making like the recipes and doing all that, was there any ever like sort of paranormal experience or even the family was like, I can't believe this happened?
I love that question. I would definitely say the entire book itself. So it was maybe about 2 years ago, I had learned about maybe about 20 people's recipes, and I'd connected with maybe about 10 of the families. And I was chatting with this lady who eventually would become my book editor. And we were talking about what we would need to accomplish for the actual book to come out. And in my mind, I was like, there's no way. There's just no way. We're never going to find all of these people. We're not going to find 20 more recipes and get all the families and get permission and travel to visit all of them, because some of them, I didn't know where they were at that point. They were just photos on the internet, and no one seemed to know the location, or I would get rumors of one, and I wouldn't be able to track it down. And so almost on, like, an every other week basis, some crazy synchronicity thing would be happening. Like, I was tracking down a woman who was allegedly buried in California. I'd been hearing about this California carrot cake, and someone had it there. This is the woman who actually ends up being still alive. And the day that I learned about one woman, her, like, daughter reached out, like, separately, and she was like, "Oh, I just heard about you." And I was like, "I literally have been searching for your mom for years." And she was like, "Oh, I was chatting with a friend, and I thought this was." And so just, like, really crazy. Or, like, another family, when I was, like, trying to research them, like, randomly, I would get a message from their, like, great-granddaughter or something like that. So maybe this is less paranormal, but it is, like, the synchronicity that happened is, like, it was crazy. Like, it was so many Hail Mary throws in my mind. I was like, there is no way I will get in touch with everyone. I will be able to, like, set up calls, do interviews, get the blessing, get everyone to review all the stories. That was an important part. And so it is like, yeah, that's maybe less exciting. I definitely felt when I would bring the recipe to each grave, like, little things would happen of, like, it would be raining and a storm would let up right when I would get to the cemetery, and a really beautiful rainbow would come over. There's another woman has this thing about white feathers. She would always say, like, if you see a white feather, that's me. That's a sign from me from above. And I just started seeing white feathers all the time afterwards. And just little things like that. Like, I was just like, I don't know, again, like, I have my own, like, I grew up Catholic, and I have my own beliefs, and I like to think of these people, all of our loved ones living on in some way or another in a good place. And seeing all of these things that just randomly connected, it just was like so many tiny synchronicity movements. Nothing ever crazy, nothing ever like, no cooking bowls moving on their own or anything like that, but definitely like a lot of presence were
Yeah,
felt,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
What do
Well,
you
thank you.
do you believe in ghosts and spirits, things like that?
I think I'd like to. I think, like, I lean on healthy skeptic. I freaking love a ghost show. I love on your channel with just, like, talking to people and, like, hearing like, just so much of it I love. I think, like, I I the joke is, like, when you grow up Catholic or you go to Catholic school is it makes you very, like, agnostic questioning afterwards.
So of course.
You know
Yeah,
what I
Yeah,
mean?
100%.
100%.
Of
Yeah, we
course,
did the
yeah.
same, both of us. Yeah, that's
So
Yeah,
what we
I'm,
yeah,
did.
like,
the
very
both of
much
us. Yeah,
down. Right?
Yeah,
Exactly. Like,
yeah,
you kind of have to be.
yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
it's nuts. What do you think spirits are? I ask all our guests this.
I love that. I think, like, I love the idea of the soul having some sort of, like, actual energy or something like that, and then that just goes on and continues on. I mean, for me, I find like this project has given me so much like meaning of like connecting with others and connecting through food and connecting through the dead that I would love to believe, even maybe less so for myself, but I would love to believe that all of my loved ones and friends and family and everyone I get to meet will go on and just like just go on somewhere, whatever that means. But yeah, again, energy sounds like a really boring
No,
summary, but
that's
something along
fine.
those lines,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
fine. Thank you for it.
Uh,
You'd be surprised. A lot of guests have trouble answering that question. So thank you
It's
for
yeah,
being,
tough.
forthright with
yeah.
that. Um,
They're always afraid.
they're always
Everyone's
afraid.
afraid to answer
Always.
it.
Yes.
Of
They
course.
don't want to admit. It's like we're like, look, man, no, we're talking about ghosts here.
It's like
Like
we don't know what
nobody
they
gives a
Yeah.
are.
shit.
That's what we're trying to
We don't
figure
know what
out.
they
Yeah.
are. It's all right. There's
Well,
no
yeah,
wrong.
I
This
wish
isn't a
we
test.
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
There's
exactly.
no
Well,
wrong answer.
right?
So, so
My
You
Rosie,
know.
dream is
Do
Go
you,
ahead.
do you have a recipe of your own? And
I do.
will that recipe in the far future possibly end up on a headstone?
Yes, I feel like I have to at this point, and I always, like, love cemeteries, so I'm actually working with Congressional Cemetery where I interned. We joked that will I be put in the intern plot, like the intern section, to be interred there eventually, but my husband and I are buying, a double plot there, and, I mean, I haven't decided. Of course, I feel like, of course, a gravestone recipe, and if I had to pick one right now, it would be a clam linguine or, like, clam pasta. I
Mm.
really love clam-based dishes. As a kid, that was, like, one of my favorite flavors, and as an adult, since we moved to California, like, I love hosting people and making, like, homemade pasta, and you crank it out, and you let the noodles dry, and then you throw it all and, like, get the white wine sauce and the parsley and the clams cooking, and you get to, like, enjoy the smells of it and then tasting it all together, and it's briny, and he's from Maine, so I felt like the clam has, like, a nice connection to Maine and Maine food as well, so that's what I would pick if it was right now, but maybe forever.
Mm. Cool,
Uh,
awesome.
First of all, Rosie, thank you so much for your time today. I got one more quick question for you. You know, and for everyone, obviously, this is Rosie Grant. Her book "To Die For." It's a bestseller. Taking these recipes off of headstones and putting them together. It's
Great name
fascinating to
too,
me.
by the way. Great name,
Eh,
you know,
Yeah.
it's
It's a great name. It's everything about it is absolutely
yeah, yeah.
perfect. It's one of those great
So
ideas you want
awesome.
to kick yourself for. It's just so wonderful. And you can also find Rosie at Ghostly Archive on social media. What is next for you? What is next for Ghostly Archive now that this is out and about and everyone knows you for it?
Yeah. Well, I now have 12 new people to look into and connect with their families. I just learned about my very first European one, which is in Amsterdam. So I'm going to see what I can learn about this person and
Oh,
maybe travel
global.
to Amsterdam.
Yes.
We'll see how again, if the family is down to be included. And then I would like to do either like a thanatology or death doula training. I think this cookbook is very born out of community archives and archiving your personal recipes. The next one, I think it might be more in like grief work. I would actually like to do more cemetery preservation classes because like the work of folks who are like trained in doing upkeep for cemeteries, and LA itself has very well preserved cemeteries, but you go a little bit more into the valley and there's a lot that could use volunteers. So I would love to be much more knowledgeable about that, of the correct tools, the proper procedures, things like that, because there's such an art form to it.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you so
Yes.
much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, it's been
Thank
great.
you.
It was a
Thank
It's
real
been
pleasure.
great.
so much.
Yeah.
Before we sign off, do you mind if I ask, do you both
Oh,
have,
ask
are you a cemetery person yourselves? Would you both be buried in a cemetery? Would you prefer something else? Also, you don't have to answer that if you're like, I
I'll
live.
tell you, I have a whole plan, but John, you go first.
Yeah, alright, I actually have a really wacky plan. I have a really wacky plan.
Ooh.
I I do want a marker, I do want a headstone, but I don't wanna be buried. I wanna be, my ashes condensed into a diamond, and I want that
Ah,
diamond to be given to my children,
oh,
and I want one piece of the diamond to be etched into the headstone. That's
that.
yeah, 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 that's what I want. So,
That's
Mine's a little different. So my wife knows that when I'm dead, first, uh, I want to be poked with a stick every hour to make sure I'm dead for 3 days
mm,
because as the lore goes, and that it's usually 3 days when someone rises, they wake up. So just to
yeah,
make sure I'm dead,
make
poke
sure you
me.
don't got
Like I don't want to
Lazarus
be.
syndrome.
That's correct.
exactly.
Exactly.
Put a
Then
little
I'm to
bell
be
by the
cremated.
grave.
I want to be cremated for sure
Mm.
because I don't want to be in a box just in case even after 3 days I wake up.
Oh god,
Uh,
yeah.
so I'm just convinced of it. Like it's that kind of thing is the most claustrophobia is one of my biggest fears. So
Yeah.
I'm
You
to be
punched it up,
cremated. Then those,
you know?
yeah, those ashes are then I will have a list, and then those ashes are to be made into delicious treats to be fed to my enemies. So that is the she will have the list of people I don't like, and then that is That's how it's going to go down.
That's
Probably.
Great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'll have.
Oh my gosh,
That's-
double time, the most unique. Now I'm like, wait, I need something. I want to like level up. Like that's so good.
John's is a little more romantic. Mine's a little vengeance built, but it's fine.
Yeah. Yes.
both are
It's
fun.
but I'm not going to care.
No.
I have seen my favorite thing I've ever seen is the stuff online where the guy had, and I don't know if it's a prank or not, but it looked like it was legit. Where while he was being lowered, the everybody's probably seen this, where the
Oh yeah,
casket's
he's
being
calling
lowered.
out. Wait, stop!
He's
Don't do
calling
this."
out like,
Yeah.
wait,
that's
don't do
great.
it. And I find
Yeah.
that guy's like one of my heroes.
Ugh,
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
to do that, any sort of death joy, like that's why I like Second Line in New Orleans. You know how
yeah.
they do the parades for that. For, I do find that to be most, to be the really just clever and fun and enjoy it and not be so dark and everything else.
Helps out the family
I
too,
don't
to
have
be
the,
honest with you.
Yeah.
When you think about it,
yeah,
and you get
I
people
don't have.
smiling at a funeral, something's happening. So
Well, also, I'm just wildly uncomfortable with it, with grief
Yeah.
and sadness. I have to make a joke, and it's very gallows humor. It's like I can't, so I want it to be a little bit more
I'm
light, and I just don't like
I
the whole
also,
vibe.
I have no problem processing grief until the person is old. If someone dies in
Mm.
their 90s and then everyone's like sobbing and crying, I'm confused. That confuses me. It's like, wait a minute, shouldn't we be
Yeah,
celebrating this
great work.
person's life? This person lived till 90. There's some people that don't even make it into their 40s, like when they hit
Yeah.
adulthood. Like, wait a second.
There's a lot of people I
Yeah.
wish didn't make it into their 40s.
40s, yeah, right?
That's the difference.
Yeah.
You know what I
Or,
mean?
you know what?
Sometimes it's like COVID. Listen, I'm a firm believer COVID did not deliver on the promise that it was. Too many people
Yeah.
were still here that shouldn't have made it. And
And
it's like,
Still
it
have
would
a
have feeling
lot of
hurt a little bit.
commitments.
I say it all the
I'm a little
time.
dark.
Thanos was right. I say it all the time. Thanos was right.
Sometimes,
You're the hot take.
as long as we get their treats and they get their recipes before they go, if they're any good,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
which is the benefit of this.
I mean, listen,
But yeah,
as somebody
we're
that
trying.
loves cemeteries, Rosie, I can't tell you enough how awesome it is that you put all this together, all the research, the time, the traveling. I mean, it's so cool. And it's such a, like we were talking about, there's not many headstones that have recipes on them. So the fact that
It's wild. The whole thing.
yeah, it blows my mind. I think it's wild and I love it.
You know what's funny? Who turned me on to Rosie actually is your mother, my sister.
Oh,
in terms, like,
Really?
she sent me, like, this is a while ago, and I had DM'd you a while ago, but you were probably in the thick of promo
Oh,
and
I'm so
finishing this
sorry.
book. And then no, don't apologize.
Yeah,
I was like, she shot it to me, and I literally, when she sent it to me, I was, it is one of those ideas, and I'm not blowing smoke, where this is so genius that you did this. And I knew your business. And then I just reached out to you recently. Again, I'm like, I got to try again. And then you're probably coming down off of a little bit. So it's like, yes. Yeah. And I wanted to get this in because I want to do this. And we're going to drop this the week of Thanksgiving.
Thank
Uh,
you.
And do it. But you truly are the only other person I have met or have seen that does something as unique has done something as unique in a cemetery relation as what John does. John's really the first person I've ever seen online cleaning headstones, and he's talking to spirits while he does it.
I
What
love
you've done
it.
to somewhat communicate with spirits is an absolute, or the people who've passed, is truly fascinating, and
awesome.
it is a
So
wonderful way to
awesome.
do it, to keep that spirit alive, and we appreciate you and we appreciate your time very much, and it's a really fun adventure. We wish you nothing but success for this, and we appreciate you coming on to
Yeah.
Splintered Spirits and talking about this with us.
Man,
Yeah,
y'all are
and
the
then the
best.
same thing with your next
Oh.
venture, the next thing you do, you let us know. We'd love to have you back on and talk about it once
Oh,
everything's
John's
calm
gonna start
and
looking online for cemetery restoration classes. I can't
Yeah.
believe you haven't.
yeah.
I mean, I didn't even know such a things
Oh, yeah, no,
existed.
such things exist. It's just when it comes to headstone cleaning, it's just insane. Like, you get, like, so many people that are, like, diehards about it, that are like, "If you don't do it this way, it's wrong." And listen, I turn around and my whole thing to them is, yo, when I can do it a drop of dawn and some light scrubbing will outlast any of your techniques. I still visit headstones, still to this day visit headstones that I cleaned years ago. that look
Mm.
brand new. And we're not talking about
Wow.
granite ones. We're talking about limestone. And the only headstones I don't touch, are the red slate, the slate stone ones. I just stay away from them. If I ever do have to clean one, that's when I'll use like a biological solution that I can go every couple weeks and spray on and walk away from. I stay away from those.
Yeah.
Those crumble. Those are,
And
and
John's selling himself short too, because he did a cemetery a couple years ago called the Brown Cemetery in our town. That was like a really forgotten, predominantly African American cemetery
Oh.
that he went out about and really sort of cleaned up the whole thing. And we're going to tell that story soon on this.
Oh,
But he
can't
really
wait.
tried to restore that thing, and many people have. Like every 20 years, somebody goes in and does it, and he was one of those people that really brought in and kept it clean because no one gives a shit about it, and it's kind of
and that
sad.
that is true.
But
I did do that, but what I'm doing differently that nobody else did, every 20 years somebody comes in and does it, is I'm keeping up with it. Most people come in
That's
for like a project or something, and then they walk away. Another 20 years goes by, the place just falls into, neglect again. And you've seen what that's like with cemeteries. When they get
oh, yeah.
neglected, they look, I mean, sure, it's spooky, it's cool, but it's sad at the same time. And we're losing history. We're
Yeah.
losing a micro history. And yeah, so I went in, yeah, I fixed the place up and I keep up with it. I go in there once a month now and just, take care of the grounds and, all that.
Oh,
You know,
that's
look at this, a couple of
awesome.
taffies talking about
couple
cleaning up
Couple of
tablets.
cemetery.
tappies.
Couple taffies, taffophiles. I love it. All right, Rosie, we're gonna let you go. We're gonna let
Thank
you
you
go.
both
Thank you so
so
much.
This was awesome. I'm so grateful to you both. Thank you.
Hey, listen, and we're
Okay,
grateful
great.
to be on. I mean, that you coming on, this is awesome. I love this entire thing. You are incredible. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's so cool.
All right. Well, that's it for another episode of Splintered Spirits. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, stay curious.